security internship program, we more go into concepts and we talk about what are the activities that is performed in each kind of an activity, each kind of a field. The first week we talk about security awareness, where we are introducing security as a concept and go with what do you mean by an attack, what is kind of breach and what is an attempt and things like that. We focus on that. In the second week, we talk about infrastructure, security and pen testing. And third week, we go to DevSecOps, and fourth week, we usually go with the cloud security of that. So this week, we are not doing DevSecOps. We're doing a small deviation out of it. A lot of people are requesting, is there any hands-on practical thing that we can do? What actually happens in our regular course? One of the topics that is going to be there, that is going to be discussed or not. And I thought probably one particular concept everyone should understand, whether you're a developer, you're a DevOps engineer, or a DevSecOps engineer, or a pen tester. This plays a very important role, and that particular concept is firewall, right? So we'll talk about firewall. We'll talk about what is this, what is firewall, right? Types of firewall that are present out there. And then we'll also talk about from an Ubuntu perspective. At an OS level, there's a firewall out here, right? We'll talk about that and we'll see how to configure that, right? Before we could configure firewall, we'll set up a small Apache web server out here and we'll see how the website can be accessed from outside, right? Without firewall and with firewall, what is happening out there, how it is behaving out there, right? This is, we are talking about from a very basic perspective. This works in any firewall product that's going to be there, right? So that we are going to take into consideration today. Yeah. So before I talk about firewall, there are certain few things that we need to understand, right? Few things that we need to understand. Let's say there are two devices. This is computer A and computer B, right? So A wants to send a message called hi to computer A, and B also wants to reply.
Did you share your screen?
Okay, sorry. I thought I'm sharing. Can you see my screen, guys?
Yes.
Okay. So before we talk about firewall, so we'll talk about certain few other basic stuff that is needed out there, right? We need to understand what is a network and what is the different things that make up a network, right? So if there are two devices in a network, let's say device A and device B, and there are two computers out there, and they want to exchange message, right? They want to exchange message. Let's say even if the message is as just two character called hi, there are a lot of additional information that is added to that, right? So usually what happened was before the network was standardized, so that all computers in anywhere in the world should be able to communicate with them, right? It meaning having a common language. So usually one of the common languages we have is English that will help us communicate with almost anyone in the world. At least most of the people will be able to communicate. In a similar way, for devices on the computer network or on the internet should be able to communicate with each other. There was a standard required out there, and that was called as an OSI standard, right? So this standard, what happens is that there are certain set of information added to your actual message. Okay, there's certain set of information added to your actual message. This basically is used so that your packet can reach the destination, right? So for instance, let's say I'm having one device in India and other device which I want to communicate in the US, right? How does the packet from here knows how to go there, right? For instance, let's say you have a letter, you're posting that letter from India to the US. How does it goes out there? So there's a lot of information on the letter that is used by the postal service for sending out. That is the from address is the There's a to address is the where it needs to go, right? There are a lot of other things that are present out there. In a similar way, there's something other information that are required out there, right? I'm not going much deeper. This particular OSI model itself is a single session related worth topic, but we are not focusing on that part, right? So for a packet to go from one location to another location, there are multiple things that are required out there. And the one main thing is the IP address. Okay, the IP address that is going to be there. The IP address is going to tell how to reach the destination, right? It just talks about the to address and from address, right? Because every packet that is being sent out there, it will have something called as a source IP address and destination IP address. Okay. There's also one more thing out there, right? So let's say you're running in your laptop, right? You're running in your laptop. There's something called as an SSH service. There's something called the HTTP. HTTP is like a web page, right? Website. SSH is like a remote access. How do I connect to a remote server and manage it? This software will do for that. And let's say there's also something called as an FTP. When a packet based on the IP address, it will reach this particular system, that is system B. How do I know which application should I send this packet? Because there are three services running out there, right? There is a web browser running out there. There is an, SSH running out there or FTP running out there. And one more way we can also think about is, let's say you have opened multiple tabs in your browser, right? One is your Gmail tab, one is your, Yahoo tab, and one is your Facebook and Insta. When the packet comes in, how does packet know which tab that actually data belongs to, right? How does it know? So in order to sort out this process, there's something called as a port number that has been assigned to that, right? So port number on the client side, it is going to be very different. On the server side, it is going to be very different as well. All right. So client side, it is going to keep on changing for every different part. So I'm in the client. That is why I'm opening many browsers out here. But if I'm a server like a google.com, I will have a port something dedicated like 80 or 443 just for accessing my HTTP server, right? This Google server will have SSH. Why? Because the admin needs to connect it to manage it, right? Make configuration changes and things on that. No one else should be allowed for that except the admin on there. So this is predominantly the process that comes into play, right? So there's also something called as an port number is at the layer for, transport layer, and TCP UDP something out there. TCP is called as an reliable protocol, meaning if I lose any packet in the middle, in a simple way we can tell it is going to be retransmitted, whereas in UDP is non-reliable protocol. If it loses any packet in the middle, it is not going to is there. In a simple way we can tell is that you will have a registered post, right? When the register post is used, after the mail is delivered, you will get a message back telling that mail is delivered, right? So similarly, when you go out on a vacation, when you send back a postcard, there is no guarantee that postcard will reach the destination. Also, you will not get a message back telling that the postcard was delivered to the location. There's no guarantee. Both of them have their own advantages and disadvantages and specific processes that is required. Some application require UDP, some require TCP, and there's a specific reason for that. So these are the things that we need to have an understanding of, right? So when we talk about firewall predominantly, right, what is going to happen is that when I talk about OSI model, it is going to have about 7 layers that is going to be there. Okay. So data link layer talks about MAC address, which we are not going to cover now. It is in the network layer where we talk about IP address. Okay. And the transport layer, the TCP and UDP, we talk about in transport layer, both of them. And anything else predominantly we talk about application layer, like your HTTP, SSH, and so on. All right. So whenever you see firewall or network job postings, right? So they'll tell we're looking for L2 engineer, we're looking for L3 engineer, right? Or we are looking for L4 engineer. L4 usually it does not come, it's the firewall that comes in there, right? What they mean by L2 engineer is layer 2 engineer. So they want someone who is an expert in switch devices, right? So then when they talk about layer 2, they're talking about network layer. The device that is there is called as a router. Okay. So they want an engineer who is having with routing knowledge of that. That is what is going to be processed. Okay. So when we talk about firewalls, predominantly, generally when we talk firewall, they're talking about network firewall. Meaning this firewall is going to look at the packet information that is going to be present in these 4 layers. Okay. It is going to make a decision based on this, right? In a technical, what do you mean by a firewall? Right? What do you mean by it? Before I could go further into this, let's understand what do you mean by a firewall. So a lot of people will tell firewall is a security device that protect users from hackers or any malicious activity. This is that, this is a very broad statement because it is not telling what protection it is giving. At the same time, it is not telling how it is giving also, right? What is the problem that it is solving? It has not been discussed out here. Nothing is there because firewall is also a security device. Your antivirus is also a security device that will protect you from hackers. There are a lot of other devices are there that can be used for protecting against hackers also, IDPS and things like that, right? What exactly does a firewall do? So now, in a simple way, we can talk about is, let's say you are going to the college and there is an exam today, and during the exam college gate, right, or in the entrance, there is a security guard, right? There is a security guard. So what is the job of the security guard? The job of the security guard is to check the ID. If ID is valid, then allow. All right. So we can have other things also. Let's say this exam is only for second year students of a particular course. So if ID belongs to first or third year students, then don't allow student, right? So meaning you can see here what is happening. These are called as the rules. So firewall is like a security guard who is going to check, verify a particular rule is, sorry, satisfied or not. Only when the rule is satisfied, it is going to allow. And if the rule is not satisfied, it is going to drop the packet, meaning it is not going to allow it to pass through. Okay. Sorry. So this is very much simple. So here now you can ask, what is this rule? What is this rule? Okay. So this is where your criteria comes into play on the types of firewall, right? If you telling only allow anyone to access on port 80. So meaning what happens is that there is a server here. Okay. There's a firewall here. Firewall usually sits on the before the server or it's based inside this. Okay. So usually when I'm running a website, it is running on port 80. There may be other services running on that like SSH and FTP and things like that. 20 and 21. I don't want others to communicate on the SSH level. I just want others to communicate on only on port 80, right? And things like that. So here I'm telling, I'm using IP address, port number for writing the rules. Okay. I'm telling I'm using IP address and port number for writing the rules. And since what is happening, where is that we are using this IP address and port number? We are using in the TCP layer, transport layer, and the network layer, and the MAC address also can be used sometime. So this is called as a network based firewall. This kind of a firewall will not look into what is happening at the application layer. Okay, this is not looking at what is happening at the application layer. So it is only working only till transport layer, and hence it is going to be called as a network based firewall, right? So if a firewall is working on the application level, then it will be called as an application firewall. Okay. I know this can be a bit confusing. Let's do one thing, right? Let's do one thing. Let's try to see the actual packet, what is happening out there. And let's see what is the network part and what is the layer part, right? Usually what happens is that this is called as a reference model. In reality, we are going to use the TCP IP model. The company or organization devices will stick with reference model, but when we're discussing, we'll always go with the OSI model. And you can see there's not much difference. Both of them are exactly the same thing. The data link and physical layer are called as a link layer. The network layer is called as the internet layer. Transport is same. Application present and session layer is going to be called as an application layer. Right. So what we are going to do now is that we are going to capture the traffic and see in real time what exactly is happening out there. So this is not something. Before you could always try to clear the history. There's nothing much. Only recently I've got only 3 websites. This is my test environment. So for practicing our firewall here, right, to understand what's happening, I am using 3 virtual machines, VM1, VM2, and VM3. Okay, you could see here. So what is this is going to behave is that I am trying to simulate how the firewall works between devices out there. Right, we'll look into that part. Before we could go into firewall, we are looking at other things as well, as I told. First and foremost, we'll start with something called as a Wireshark. This is basically not going to be needed by you for managing firewall predominantly. I'm just using this as an example for showcasing what happens when a packet is sent and received. Okay. So in order to reduce the impact, yeah. So I'm going to access a website called testfire.net. This is a website, this is a website that is predominantly used for testing for hacking practice. Okay, this is a website used for hacking practice. This is totally legitimate for you to hack. Any other website, I don't suggest it. You should not do that part. So here we are not going to do any kind of an hacking or anything, but I want to see what happens when I press the domain name in the browser, and then it is going to be used, right? So before I could press, I'm capturing this packet out here. Okay. And press enter. The website opens up and let me stop all the unnecessary packets. So you could see here, just by opening the page in the browser, amount of information that is getting passed through, right? So this is how things are going through here. And you can see this is the communication that is happening out there. If you check what is my IP address for my Kali Linux here, the IP address is 192.168.178.130, right? This is there. And what is the IP address for testfire.net? I'm getting 65.61.137.117. And you could see here the same thing is happening out there. There's the packet that is being sent from the server to the browser. And in the previous, you can see here, there's a packet sent from the browser, that is the Kali machine, to the server, right? So let's look at this HTTP. This is a proper packet. You could see here, there is an internet protocol, right? So this is where your information related to the network layer is going to be sent. That is your IP address, destination IP address, source IP address, other information out here. You could see here, right? This is the actual data that is getting, just even if you're sending a high message, this data, all this information, it is getting sent out, right? This is a raw packet that is sent from your system out there, right? When you go through networking, you'll understand completely what is happening, right? And see here in the transport layer also, we are using the port number. So I'm telling for the destination machine, the server port number is 80. My browser packet particular is given the port number 44,238, right? A server will have a static IP, static port, right? That is usually is going to be 80 or 443 by default, whereas a client can have a very much. So maximum number of port number is 65,535. This is the IP maximum port numbers that is possible. So 44 to 238 is it's between that, it's right. So this is the data that is being sent out there by us. All this is nothing but your information that is being sent by a browser. But this is nothing to do. The Internet Protocol, Transport Control Protocol will not have information related to your website, right? Your information related to your website will be there in the application layer here, which is nothing but hypertext transfer protocol, right? And this is where your data comes into play, okay? For instance, here it is bit more cluttered approach for this. I will use one more tool called as a burp suite that is used for seeing what information is being sent by us, right? So for instance, this is a tool called burp. This only deals on application layer, meaning it is not going to show me the information related to transport, network layer, data link layer, physical layer. It is not going to look into that. Just like here, it is showing me all the information. No, it is only going to look at the HTTP layer only, right? And it will give a bit more clear picture of that, right? For instance, if you see here, testfire.net, when I press testfire.net here, this is actually the information that is sent from your browser, right, to the server, right? It is telling this is the server I want to connect to. It is telling about what is the browser it is using for communication and things like that. And it is telling I want to access the base, but let get slash is where it's telling show me the landing page for the website. In response, what is going to happen is, see here, I'm going to get the HTML part of the page, right? Server responds back with the HTML code, and this is the code that is getting displayed here in the browser, right? It is telling where to get the images and things, all that information has been given, that it will take care of that. And I think it has to worry about that. So the reason why I'm showing this is if a firewall only talks about Internet Protocol and Transport Protocol. So what are the information here? So then it is called as a network-based firewall. Or if a firewall deals with this information, these two information that is there, then this will be called as an application firewall, right? And application firewall, the problem with application firewall is for each application there need to be different firewall, meaning for email pattern there is going to be different because the request and response for email is going to be different. For this scenario, we are going to something called as a WAF, meaning web application firewall. Okay, so that is what is going to happen. So now there are two types of firewall that is present out here. Predominantly, one is a network firewall which works on IP address and port number. And the second one is the web application firewall that is going to be present out there. Right. Again, there are firewalls based on the implementation also. Right? For instance, this is the internet. You're communicating from the browser here. And this is your server. Right? This is your server. A company will have a physical firewall server. Right? This is going to be the what your Cisco, Palo Alto, things like that, largely blue team is going to be done out there. This is going to be there. And these are very expensive firewalls. They're there for a reason, right? They not only do, they're called firewall, but they do multitask, right? They do multitask. First of all, their speed is very fast, right? That is the main reason for that. Second thing, they not only do firewall capability, they do something called as a VPN functionality also, virtual private network. And there are a lot of other things, right? And but they are dedicated for a network. They not only protect the server, they protect the other devices that are there in the network as well, right? For instance, when you're sitting in your company, you will have a network firewall that is going to track every data that you send from your system is going to be there, going through that path. Right? This is a physical server that's going to be there. There's also one more firewall that is going to be present on your server, right? There's going to be firewall that is going to be present on your server. Sorry, the firewall that is going to be present. This is going to have additional layer of security. Okay, this is what we are going to talk about today. This is going to give us a much more, both of them functionality is exactly the same. There is no difference. They both at the core level, whether it's an inbuilt firewall or a separate firewall, when it comes to firewall functionality, they both will work the same. Right. So anyone is having any questions?
Screen, sir? Can you share your screen, sir?
Yes, I'm sharing the screen. Can others see the screen?
Yes, I can
Yes,
see
sir.
it.
We can.
Okay. I think probably.
Yes, sir.
Yes, I can see it.
Great. So I think probably the person who is not able to see probably can leave and then again rejoin. Maybe that could be some transmission error. That could be the reason for that. Right. So now the firewall, this is what is going to happen.
I think
right?
we did not record the session.
Oh.
Yes. Actually, I dropped the message.
Yeah, because of your message, I came to know that I have started the recording.
Usually Devashish sir will record.
Yeah, normally Devashish normally started the recording, right?
Yes.
So
mostly we have not done anything.
Sir, I have a question, sir.
Yes.
Tell me, does a firewall does it block threads, or does it only notify you that is a
No,
thread?
it blocks the threads. It blocks the threads, right? So what is going to happen is that based on the rule set, right? So what is going to happen is, let me tell. Firewall, what are the actions performed by firewall? Right? So firewall will perform 3 actions. One is allow, one is reject, and one is drop. Okay. So again, there is a default behavior of firewall also. Default behavior is drop all packets, meaning it will not allow anyone inside unless until there's a rule present out there. Okay, unless until there's a rule present out there. We will see this in real time. So what we'll do is that there will be a server, web server. We will run. It will run on port number 80. When I try to connect from Kali Linux, by default there is no rule. So it will drop the packet. Kali Linux will not be able to access it. Okay, that is what is going to happen. Once I add rule, Kali Linux will be able to access it. Okay, so whenever a packet comes to a firewall, let's say this is our firewall. The firewall will have many rules. Rule 1, rule 2, and keeps on going till rule n. Okay, when a packet comes here, it is going to check out all the rules. So based on the rule, if there is a rule that will tell allow the packet, it will allow the packet to pass through, meaning it will allow the packet to go through the main server that is going to be reached out. If it does not manage to be for any of the thing, 2 things can happen. Either it is going to drop or it is going to reject. Both the cases, the packet is not going to pass through. It is not going to the destination at all. That's the thing that is going to happen out here, right? But you might ask, what is the difference between drop and things like that? The drop, what is going to do is that it will delete the packet and be quiet. All right, that is what is going to happen. In reject, it is going to send back a message to the sender that packet was not forwarded. This message is going to be sent back to that part. Previously, in early cases, when the firewall came into play, the default behavior was to reject the packet. Okay. Now, most of the firewall will not allow this process at all. There's a reason for that. So let's assume this process. Okay. So now I'm having a web server. Right. And there's a firewall. Even though this is an internal firewall, I'm taking it as a logically a separate entity. Right. So now this machine is sending a request on port 80. And this is supposed to be dropped, right? It is not allowing. If there is a reject option out there, it is going to send back a message that you're not allowed, right? What hackers started doing is that they abused this behavior, right? What they did was they sent thousands of packets. They know they cannot pass through. Firewall is there. They know they cannot pass through, but they still send thousands of requests or even millions of requests, right? Millions of requests to the firewall. What firewall got was it got busy sending a reply to all those millions of requests, right? To the hacker. Hacker knows that it does not care about that. But when it is sending a reply back to the millions of users, this firewall gets very busy and it crashes. What happened when the firewall crashes? The entire network goes down, right? This is a major problem that occurs, right? The entire network goes down, and this can be a major issue, right? So in order to allow this, they started having the drop mechanism. But what happens in drop? It is not sending back the messages out there. Hence, the CPU utilization on the firewall is at a limited source, and it is still able to function even when it gets millions of packets out, right? Because remember, there will be a small memory that will be there, and every time it's sending a reply back, this memory is going to be used, right? That will cause the firewall to drop because it will run out of memory. But when it drops, this memory is not going to be used because the packet is discarded as soon as it comes inside, right? That is what is going to happen in there. So let's look at this behavior, right? So what I'm going to do is here, I'm going to use one server where I'm using it, running a web server, and this is an Ubuntu machine, right? I will install Apache. It will take well less than 2 minutes. Then we'll see how the Kali access is going to be. We'll try to access that web server using Kali, and we'll see how it is going to work. So by default, this is by machine. Let me log in, right? So installing a basic web server is very simple. Only a couple of commands is needed, nothing more than that, right? So what I'm going to do is, see here, I'm going to do something called sudo apt install, apt update. I'm going to enter the student password here. This is making sure that when I install Apache, it is installing the latest version of Apache is installed of that, right? That is what is the main reason for running sudo apt install. So in the course, we have a chapter called package management. There we'll talk about what are these functions and things like that, right? So now this is done. So now I'm going to sudo apt install Apache, press enter, and now it is asking that Apache 2 is going to be installed. Once this is installed, let it done. Once Apache installs, it is going to create a demo page for us to access on the IP address. All right. So let's say I can use localhost also. I can also use the IP address also here, right? 192.168.178.129. http://192.168.178.129. You see, I'm able to see a default page. This is basically proof that web server is up and running in my website on the server. The coding will be taken care by the developers, that I'm not really worried about it now. So now, what is the default behavior on Ubuntu? By default, what happens in Ubuntu is it is having a firewall called UFW. UFW firewall is not running by default. Okay, it is not running by default, meaning by default Ubuntu is not protected at all. Okay, so for instance, so when I see here, how do I check whether the firewall is running or not? Give sudo UFW status and see it is showing as inactive. So if the firewall is not working, it means any user can access anything from anywhere. So it means if I go to my Kali Linux browser, if I give http:// 192.168.178.129, which is the IP address belonging to the Ubuntu machine, right? When I press enter here, it is able to access it. There is no restriction, right? So now what I'm going to do is that I'm going to enable firewall. When firewall enabled, what is going to happen? It is going to block all by default. That is what is going to happen. Okay. So meaning if I enable firewall now, from Kali Linux should be blocked from accessing the page. Okay. Should be accessing the page of that. So now how do I enable is this sudo ufw enable. Okay. This is something you have to do if you're a developer or a DevOps engineer or DevSecOps engineer. Every machine that you create for accessing things will have a firewall, and that firewall should be enabled always. And that is your responsibility. So the reason why we are going for Ubuntu is the most common used Linux operating system out there, right? And one more reason is there's also something called as a firewall D. It is a bit more a complex level than using UFW. So to make it this class simple to introduce concept of firewall, we are using UFW firewall. And now you can see firewall is active and it is there. Now, if I refresh this page, you will see the page will not load, right? So I can refresh it here. You can see it is in the running mode itself. It is running mode only, meaning the page is not loaded. If it's confusing, I can press enter. And you will see it is not loading auto. Previously, it loaded in a fraction of a second because it is in the same network and things. It was not having any issue out there. Right now, it is not loading out there. Why? By default, everything is blocked. Hence, the Kali Linux is not able to access it as well because this website is running on port 80 and port 80 is blocked. So now I will do one thing. Before writing a rule, let me disable the firewall. Sudo EFW disable, right? Press enter and firewall is stopped. Now if I go back here, press enter, refresh again here. Now you see it loads. I'll try here as well. See, it is loading out there because the firewall is disabled. It is how it's going to happen. So now what you have to understand is that firewall limitations. Someone asked me, how does firewall protect against threats, right? Technically speaking, the answer is going to be no, right? The firewall is going to set number of parameters. If parameters match a rule, it will decide to allow or drop. But if an hacking attempt is going on, it will not detect it. Okay, there's another device for that called as an IDPS. In a simple way, what we can think about is that, let's say there's an exam center. This is the exam hall. Okay, and the students are sitting in the different desks that are there out there. So this is the door. The firewall is like a security guard. It will check the ID, and if the ID matches for the student, it will allow inside of that. Right? Once inside, if the student is doing any malpractice, is copying in other nets or is doing some cheating out there, firewall is not able to know about that. It only checks the ID, and if the ID is matching, it will do the proctor activity or the exam invigilator activity will not be done by the firewall. That this activity is done by a device called IDPS, right? Because this is looking at the behavior of different connections that are there, and that is going to do. So firewall is an excellent security mechanism, but it is not the everything will not be done on them. Right? You might tell sir Cisco Metal, Karthik, Cisco ASA firewall or other firewalls from Cisco can detect an attack. They can definitely detect an attack. The main reason is they may be called firewall, but internally they will have firewall, they will have VPN, and they will have IDPS, intrusion detection and prevention system capability. Okay, that is the reason for that. Just like your Wi-Fi router, right? It is not just your router. It is also your switch. It is also your gateway, right? It connects to your ISP provider and things like that. Your antivirus software, it is not just antivirus. It works against web protection, right? It against ransomware, it protects out there. It will technically, it will also work as a firewall as well, right? And it will also have IDPS functionality. This is not advanced features like what it will be there. So basic firewall features will be IDPS in that. So don't get confused from a device name and tell these are the things that is going to be done. We should always look things from a conceptual perspective, right? Technically, IDS and IPS are two different. They're combined into as IDPS. You know, it is like that. But that is how it works, right? So firewall only looks for that particular role, and then it is going to check out for that information. Okay, that is what is going to happen now. So now let's write a simple rule for this, right? Sudo UFW allow HTTP. I'm going to give out that. Right, and press enter. And you see it's a rule allowed, and UFW enable also I'll give out that. Right? If I give status, it is telling it is allowed and the port number 80 is working. Okay, port number 80 is working. Let me do one thing. Sudo apt install SSH also I'll tell. Okay, SSH basically allows me to connect from Kali Linux to this machine to run these services. I'll show you an example. Don't worry, you don't have to do this because I've already connected to via SSH. So I'm removing unnecessary stuff out there. Okay. So I've written the rule, but let me disable UFW. Disable. I've disabled it now. It is not working. I'll just show you what an SSH does here. Okay. I'll give SSH student and IP address. And yes, I'm going to give here and enter the password for student. Now we could see here, I'm actually connected to what this machine here via my Kali Linux, right? So if I give mkdir folder security here, you could see that the security folder is created here, right? So I can do anything out here. That is the SSH is basically designed for that. I can run commands and things and all can be done out here. Okay. This is basically used by administrator to from the remote machine to connect to the server to monitor the server. So now what I will do is that let me enable UFW, enable. So what is happening here? When the firewall is enabled, there is a rule in the firewall telling port number TCP/80 is allowed, meaning your web server is allowed out there. So meaning I can come back to the browser. By default, none of the traffic is allowed, but here I'm telling add an exception to port number 80. Anyone should be able to connect to port number 80. Right? That is what is going to be happening out there. So when I come back here and I press the refresh, I'm able to access this particular machine website on that particular thing. Why? There is a rule like here, only allow for that. But if I come back here and try to redo the SSH, try to reconnect for that, will I be able to connect? Right? So just check it out. So when I press enter here, previously it asked me to enter the password so that it can log in, but now it is not doing it. It is stuck. So meaning is it has sent a request to the server telling that I want to connect on the SSH port. So give me access for that. But what has happened is that the firewall, UFW firewall, has blocked or dropped that request. So my Kali Linux does not know that the request is dropped. Why? There is no reject option. If I would have got a reject, I would have got told that unauthorized access, then it would have dropped it. But that is not the case here. Right? So now it is given me it is still waiting for the response to come. So it's going to wait for a certain amount of time for that. Right? That is the default behavior. But nothing is going to happen. Why? There is no rule here that is allowing it to pass through it. Right? There is no rule here that is going to do that. For instance, the SSH is going to run on port number 22. Right? So that is how it is going to work. Okay. So now let's say, right, if I allowed sudo UFW allow, if you remember previously I gave HTTP. Actually, what is happening in the background, it is running this. Right? To make it simple, sometimes administrator may not know what is the default port for a service, so they'll give the service name. So in this case, instead of giving SSH, I'm going to give port number 22 under TCP. For TCP, allow port number 22, right? Because your package transmission can be either UDP or TCP. So I'm allowing this. I'm going to give enter, a rule added here. So if I give UFW status, now you can see that 4 set of rules out here, right? The reason here is that port 80 and 22, there are 2 rules for each. This is a UFW behavior. This is not mandatory that every firewall will behave in this pattern, right? In IP address, there are 2 types of IP address. One is IPv4 and IPv6. Whenever I add a rule, it is going to add for both IPv4 as well as IPv6. Okay, that is what is going to happen out there. So you don't have to worry much about when you go much more detail into this, you'll understand what is this behavior. But for basic stuff, this is more than sufficient. Right. So now let me go back to Kali Linux. Right, you see here connection timeout. It waited for the long time for the reply, nothing came. So connection timeout. So now I've written a rule. Will it ask? Will it connect or not? We will see out there. So when I press connect here, see now it is asking me to enter the password. It is allowed because there is a rule for this. So that is what is happening out there. Okay. So this is the basic things that you will be doing out there as a DevOps or DevSecOps engineer, right? As a DevSecOps engineer, you will be managing a server. And in case most of your case, you will not be running port 80. because this is not a secure way, meaning you're supposed to be using HTTPS, right? HTTPS will run on port number 443, right? The HTTP port number runs on 80. So as an engineer, you're going to write a rule to allow 443. And again, you will also write a rule to allow SSH, that is port number 22. In any other requirement is there, that is going to do that part for you. Okay. So now, so there may be other services, they may be running in a different port number, what you're going to do, right? At that time, you have to specify that particular port number and specify it. Okay. So we'll take a 5 minutes break and we'll come back. And after when we come back, we'll understand something called as stateful firewall.
So sorry, before we go.
Yeah.
When the firewall was installed, so what stage of the VPC was it installed? You know, from I know it from the internet into the gateway, into the public subnets, you know, to the private subnets. So at what level or stage of these is the firewall installed?
So for instance, in this case, in the Ubuntu machine, I did not install firewall. Okay. I did not install firewall. Why? Why? Because it is installed by default. Yes.
Okay.
When OS is installed. Right. So there's a good probability in your running your VPC that when you're creating the VPC instance, your UFW will also be installed out there. Right. If that is not there, I think probably what you can do is, let's say I've never installed UFW. So let me see. Probably you can do is sudo apt install UFW, you can give out there, right? So here it is telling US set to manually installed. It is telling it is automatically installed. Yeah, it is telling I don't have to install the UFW because UFW is already installed to the newest version that is there and giving a version of it out there. So if UFW is not installed on your system, this is supposed to be apt install UFW, right? Your whatever the machine, if you are using apt install, okay, apt install, if you want to install any package like Apache or SSH, this server should have one way or the other way to access the internet, right? Because what is happening when I do apt install, this is actually going to the Ubuntu repo server, and from there it is downloading the package and installing it for me. That is what is happening out there. So what happens is that either two way of doing it, there is something called as a repo management, right? In some cases, there's something called as an air gap. Okay. So what they will do is that they will not allow the system to connect to the internet at all. In that case, you need to burn the software in the ISO file or as DVD, then connect the DVD to the server and then tell that apt to connect to this DVD, right? For instance, when I do apt sudo apt update, right? Sudo apt update, you can see number of links out here. So these are the links where it is getting the package information. So it is telling these are the 4 servers where it is downloading your software and installing it out there. When you are not able to connect to this, then you'll have to give path to the DVD drive in your system here. So that then it will connect to the DVD drive and look for that package and things like that. That is going to happen out there. The problem with having a DVD drive approach is the packages may not be up to date, right? It could use a older package, and the older package could be vulnerable to an attack. So that's the main reason for that. Okay.
Thank you.
So any more questions?
Excuse me, sir.
Yes.
Excuse me, sir. There was a time I was trying to use an app on Kali Linux. And sir,
I can't hear you. Can you type in your question in the chat, Jeff?
And I don't know if you can hear me. I said there was a time I was trying to use an app on Kali Linux. We have NGROK. Then I was told to set up something, including firewall. I was told to disconnect firewall. And maybe I disconnected firewall.
Jeffrey, sorry. Jeffrey, sorry, you're not audible. I cannot make out what is the question you're asking, Jeffrey, unfortunately.
Can you be closer to your mic and stuff like that? You're kind of wondering.
Jeffrey, can you type in your question in the chat? And I will be able to read it.
Okay, I'll do that.
Yeah, it is very hard to understand. Like we can hear your voice, but we cannot understand what you are saying.
What you're telling. True. Any other questions, guys?
Mr. Karthik.
Yes. Yeah, please go ahead, Bill.
Hello?
Yeah, tell me.
So I'm saying, so there is no way that the hacker can bypass a firewall.
There is a different ways to hacker can bypass a firewall. Yeah. So for instance, there's something called as an SSRF attack. Okay. So there is the firewall here. This is the company level firewall, not at the server level. Okay. Inside the company, let's assume this is a t-shirt manufacturing company. Okay. So they have their web server here where people can log in to buy t-shirts and things like that. But in the same network, they're having their sales server. Okay. And other people computers are there as well. So now let's assume, let's say, just for the sake of argument, 11.11.11.11 is the IP address and port number 80 is the web server port that is open out there. And sales server is 11.11.11.12. And here is 11.11.11.13 and 14 and 15 out there, right? The firewall rule is there. Rule, what is that? Block all traffic. Okay. Only allow port 80 for which IP address 11.11.11.11. Let's say this is an hacker out here. If we try to connect to the sales server, the firewall will protect because it will drop the packet telling that the rule is telling block all and things like that. Right? This is that. So what hacker is going to do is that he's going to gain access because he's allowed. When the hacker will try to connect to the web server, this rule tells allow the hacker to gain access to the web server because that is there. A rule is there. Now there is an attack called SSRF. This is a web server attack. This is not happening at the network layer or transport layer. It is not happening. It is happening at the application layer. Now what I'm going to do is that I'm going to hack the web server and gain access to the control. I'll get the control to web server. Now I'm going to use the web server as a zombie attack because now when I do the ping command from here to here or attack from here to here, there is no firewall here preventing me from doing this. So this is the way to bypass, one of the ways of bypassing the firewall. Okay. So that is how it is going to do. Right? So one of the major problems what we see, how does an hacker is able to bypass a firewall is misconfiguration. Right. So one more thing is that firewall, a dedicated firewall will have its own username and password. Right. So someone can try to brute force this and gain access to admin privilege out there. There are multiple ways of going about and doing this for that. Right. So that is one way of doing the parts of that. Predominantly it's going to be misconfiguration. That is going to be there.
Okay, thank you, sir.
So anyone having any other questions? Someone's written.
So one
second.
question I am having, one of our student from internship, he pinged me in one of our CRM number. So his question is, could you please help me with guidelines on how to install Kali Linux? I have tried and it is still not working despite the fact my PC has all the requirements.
Okay. So I would suggest what you can do for practicing an easier approach is a lot of people will try to install Kali Linux directly on your machine. Okay. So I would not suggest that. What I would suggest is first install a tool called VMware Workstation. This is a free tool for personal use, right? For the enterprise, you have to pay. This VMware Workstation Pro 17 is free for personal use. You can do this. Then what you have to do is go to web page called Download Kali Linux. Okay, so get Kali is you'll get link out here. So usually what happens is that you would go to installer image and you'll download the ISO and install from it. So I would not suggest this because Kali Linux, you do a lot of experimentation and things, it will break and stuff. So having it as a virtual machine, because you can delete an virtual machine anytime, that is going to be easy. So see here, click on this virtual machine snap and it will come to this part of the web page. And here you could see here.
Are you sharing your screen?
Okay, is it not shared? Okay, sorry, let me repeat it then. I would not suggest installing your Kali Linux directly onto your system, hard drive or motherboard via through that. I would suggest downloading the VMware Workstation Pro 17. It is a Broadcom company. VMware has been taken over by them. They've made it free for personal use, right? You can download it. While installing, you can tell it's a personal use and it will allow, you don't have to enter the licensing for that. Okay. This virtual machine will allow me to run multiple devices. I can run my own network and stuff like that inside your machine. All right, do this part. So for downloading, what you can do is that go to the Get Kali Linux website, right? So go to Google, tell download Kali. So it will take you to a link called Get Kali, right? Most of the time, what people will do is that they will go to the installer image. Okay, so this will download an ISO image. They will take it into a pen drive or an DVD and they'll try to install. Don't do that. Go with the virtual machine. The main advantage of having a virtual machine is you can delete or can create a new instance or you can create multiple instances and it is going to be very easy, right? So click on this virtual machines and it will come to this part of the page, right? So here you could see there are different virtualization technology, but the one I'm looking at is VMware Workstation. That is there. This is what I want. So click on this. Either if you have a torrent, you can use it, you'll download faster. If you don't have a torrent also, is totally fine. When you click on it, it will start downloading a zip file for you. Okay, Control J. See here. It is telling Kali Linux 2024-3 VMware AMD 64. This version is there. So what I will do is that let me stop this download because I've already have downloaded this. I have a copy of it. So close this. So now let's say See here, this is the zip file I have downloaded on there. So what I'll do is that let me copy it to a new folder. Okay. So inside this, I've copied here. So now there is one more tool you have to install. There is a tool called 7-zip, right? It is very small, right? It is a zip tool. It was unzipping and zipping files. I would suggest using it where you can also use Windows Unzipper, but there are cases where it has not properly unzipped it. Okay. Now all I have to do is right click here. Okay. Two more options. 7-zip. Extract here. Click on it. And now this is going to extract. Okay. This is going to take time. The extraction process, you can see in my laptop, it is running very fast because I have a 32 GB RAM and a higher end processor, and the RAM size and hard drive is also higher end. So it does take faster. In your case, it might take 5 to 10 minutes also, depending on system performance. Once it is unzipped, all I have to do is double click on the unzipped folder. Let me increase the icon size. You can see here, there is this 3 square icon, right? Double click on it. Double click on it. See now your Kali Linux is ready to use. Okay. You don't have to install or anything. Just download, unzip it and double click. You can. Now it is running. Very simple. It will take 5 minutes maximum, right? Downloading will take time, I know. And the Kali username is Kali and password is also Kali for the first time. For you might have seen me here using root. There's a different process for that, but that is not the point of this part, right? What we are doing out there. So now you could see the Kali Linux is installed and it is running and everything, right? So this is as easy way of doing installing Kali Linux. You don't have to worry about anything, right? You can learn to install Kali Linux at a later stage, downloading the ISO that you can practice in VMware also. You don't have to practice actually on your live machine. See here, VMware will take care of everything. Even it is assigned IP address for it automatically also, right? If you give ifconfig, it will show the IP address. See here, 192.168.178.133. It is assigned also. In fact, I can connect to Kali Linux also from here. Or you see, open the browser here. Here, what is the IP address for the our web server? 192.168. Sorry. 129. Right? See here, that website is opening here as well. Okay. So this is as simple as that. You don't have to worry anything specific. Hope it was clear.
Thank you, Mr. Karthik. So,
Yes, thank you.
I think I would suggest check whether this for this particular question, check whether the app is running or not. Right, and what is the port number that you're connecting out there? It could also play an important role. If the port number is not right, it will not connect. All right, you have to be very careful with that part.
so another question Jeffrey asked. NGRK was an app I downloaded on my Kali Linux using to learn how an hacker penetrated a system. I tried all things possible to get it through, including disabling the firewall, but it was not going through. I think NGRK is like a tunneling tools, right?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I'm not sure about that one.
Yeah, and
So
NGRK is the tunneling tool. Normally, if you have a VMware or any other tools which is following your like a main computer firewall policies, or like you are using localhost and it cannot connect with the app server or any other server. So in general, this app you can bypass the firewall tools, kind of thing like a tunnel passing through a firewall rules. So yeah, it can bypass the firewall rules, but you need to set up those in your rules for that, like separate custom rules.
Yeah, that you have to be careful, because you may probably certain situation. What happens is that there could be another. You might have to set up two or three things out there. You might have not configured well, right? So then again, disabling firewall certain times. There's also something called as an SC Linux. Okay, firewall will work on port number and IP. It may be something to do with SC Linux, or it may be nothing to do with security. Maybe that you have not configured it properly, right? So one more thing I'll tell you, what could be one more issue that you could be facing out here is, for instance, let's say by default, what happens is, let's say system control status Apache is there, right? Apache 2. It is telling Apache 2 server is running out there. After I can do is I can also stop it. Okay, I can also stop it. Okay, now even though Kali UFW is allowing, this will tell unable to connect. Why? The server is not working out there. Okay. In some cases, what happens is that in Ubuntu, when I install, right, Apache, it is default. It was going to start. Okay. In some cases, the start has to be done manually. The services has to be enabled manually by like system control start Apache, if it is service based. So I'm not sure about that tool. I've not used it. So if it is based on service, you might have to start it, check whether that service is running or not. Yeah, you can give it a try. Right. Any more questions? So probably we'll continue of no manner instead of taking a break. We'll finish it off. Or you want to take a break for 5 minutes?
I think we can take a break for 5 minutes, because it will also having you'll have little time to for your bad thoughts as well.
Okay. Yeah, no. Menon, Bill is having a question about registration.
Yeah, sorry, I was in mute. So Bill, yeah, may I know which time zone you are from?
South African time.
I think then you can join only the morning session, because our US evening session will be in your midnight. And do you have an idea about Linux, AWS, and some of the DevOps toolset, or you are because I don't know your profile.
Yeah, I have a virtual machine, and I follow some courses on YouTube. But I remember I did a course on Shell.
Okay, but if you are planning to go cybersecurity, only cybersecurity like ethical hacking or thing like that, not totally in DevSecOps. So now I'm giving you from our experience level. Out of 100 students, 80% of students, they normally started with our DevOps training, then they move forward cybersecurity and DevSecOps position training with us, because that's the way you can get the whole full benefit for our cybersecurity training, because or else it is little bit advanced, or else some point you will face it is little bit overwhelming. 20% of our students, they have a prior experience on DevOps or cloud or system engineer, and they directly, or they right now working as a cybersecurity engineer as in the industry, but to upskill themselves, they directly join for our cybersecurity training. Now this choice is yours. If you want to start from scratch, I will recommend you to go with DevOps class. That is 7 weeks, Monday to Friday, 2 hours daily. Sorry, 2.5 hours daily, 5 days in a week. So then once you're done, and then maybe if you have little time, take 7 days break, because there is a capstone project along with our DevOps class. Once you got fully mastered with on cloud, Linux, and DevOps toolset, then you move forward with our cybersecurity classes. Then it will be much more easier for you to understand, because few students, though, have a little hurry and they go. I think some of the students, one or two students also here, they joined a few minutes before. I saw they done our DevOps cybersecurity classes. Then they realized, okay, it is something they overkilled. And after cybersecurity, they went back to DevOps classes. So actually, in the long term, they are losing little time. But yeah, it is up to you. Now for registration, I think our cybersecurity session is going to start from not this, next Friday, morning batch, US morning batch, and that will be your afternoon and Indian evening batch. In December 2nd week, we are going to start US evening batch, which is Indian morning and your midnight timing. So once the link is live, we are going to share those, because still the one batch is going on. So until unless the we are assured that okay, we are going to start this batch from this day, we'll make our link live, and I think by Monday or Sunday we are going to share those link. If you have any question, you can ping me, or you can complete the registration directly from the website. But it is like one more thing, please
Okay.
remember, it is a first come first serve, because in one batch we cannot take more than 10 new students in one batch. Reason, it is a hands-on, 80% of hands-on, and I need our trainer, he they personally try to give or resolve all the individual issues. So if you are like a consist of 100 student batch, we cannot make everyone become a pro after the session. We lose our quality or integrity. So last time also for our cybersecurity, which is started in October, we received like a 21 or 22 request, but we had to ask them to go move forward for the next batch, because it is only reserved for the first come first serve thing.
Okay, with the first class that you spoke about, what is it? The Devo, what is it again?
It's a DevOps. It consists of like a
Okay.
7 weeks, starting with Linux, AWS cloud, and 6 DevOps toolset like Git, GitHub, GitLab, uh, Docker, Kubernetes, Ansible, Terraform. So it is a complete DevOps toolset. Now every Saturday we used to have a 2-hour cybersecurity free session, and followed by 2 hours DevOps free session. And DevOps free session is consist of 8 consecutive weekend session. But unfortunately today our DevOps trainer, he is a little literally bedridden due to fever, so we had to postpone. If you have some queries or you want to check how the course looks like, you can go to our website in our YouTube channel. There are n number of videos is available with Mr. Devashish's recording. As a free internship, you can check out, and you just have an idea what is the goal, how the trainer is, what is the process we are followed. Then you can, but this DevOps and our cybersecurity is like a in a conjunction, like it is like a comes hands on hand. DevOps is like a more for uh, beginners level, beginners to intermediate, and our cybersecurity is for little bit from intermediate to advanced level.
Okay, no, it's understood. Thanks. I will check the website.
Yeah,
And
you
as
can
long as
ping me.
the link is
I
live,
have,
then
yeah, I have. It's better to ping us directly because within 1 or 2 days the registration will be full. Even you cannot, if you have some hindrance or blocker to do the registration, at least communicate with any one of our team member to ask them that, hey, you are interested, but you are going to do the registration by Monday or Tuesday or Wednesday as per your comfortable time, so they can block the slot for you.
okay, yeah, that's a good idea. Thank you very much.
Most welcome. And any other question from, because or else Mr. Karthik is ready to resume his journey. Okay, I don't think. Okay, Mr. Karthik.
Yeah, fine, great. So now I was expecting a particular question from the people who are going through this video. I told firewall default behavior is block all, right? I told default behavior is block all. So, but when the firewall is enabled here, right, it is only allowing me 2 packets, that is port 80 and SSH port 22. Why is that? I'm able to access other devices, right? I can go and check with Google, google.com, HTTPS, which is 443, that is working fine. I can try to install sudo apt install, I'll use a tool called Vim Net Tools. These are 2 different tools I use for some reason. This is getting installed. Why is this internet connection allowed? Don't you think it should block all? Only allow the port number 80, that too on this machine. I should not be able to allow other things out there. Why is this? Right? So this behavior, what we're talking about, is called stateful firewall. So what happened is that a firewall will typically have 2 sides. It can have more than one side, 2 sides also. Typically, it's going to be there. So something is called as an inside, one side, and other is called as an outside, right? Outside is typically where you're connected to the internet. So that is what is going to be there. So what the default behavior is block all traffic between outside to inside, right? Then allow all traffic between inside to outside. This is a very important concept we have to understand from a firewall perspective. So meaning, let's say if I open my Google or anything and open here, this is going to allow me to send this information out here. But if someone is trying to connect to this server out here. From here, this is going to be blocked. That is going to be the default behavior in this situation. Okay, by default. So how they do this is very interesting. What they tell is that instead of calling it inside, they're going to calling it as a high priority. And this side is called as a low priority. So meaning all traffic flowing from high to low allowed, and any traffic coming from low to high is blocked. Okay, so this is a very good behavior. This is a very good stress sorter. But now there's an important question here. Let's take the same way here. These two devices are there. This is A and this is B. This side is outside. This side is inside. So meaning if B try to send a message to A, this is going to be dropped because it is going from low to high. It is going to be blocked. Okay, this is fine for me. I understand. So now what A is going to do is it is going to send a message called hi to B. This is allowed, right? Because inside to outside it is allowed out there. But when B replies back hi again from B to A, this is going to be what? Is it going to be allowed or not? Right? This is not going to be allowed. In a non-state, stateless firewall, I had to write a separate rule. Allow from B to A on port or things like that. This was a very difficult process. That is why you see in a traditional environment, in older times, you were not allowed access to the internet inside a company. There has to be specific rule set for you which machine you are going to connect to that part. But now it becomes more difficult to manage, right? It means even though I don't want, I have to allow B machine. Even without A initiating, this can initiate a communication, right? If B is compromised, there's no way firewall is going to be protect against the attack from B to A. So in order to overcome this, they came up with a concept called stateful communication or stateful firewall. So what here it is going to do is that whenever a message is sent from A to her, so let's say A to B, this firewall is going to record the transaction, telling is that A to B message sent. Okay, now when a B replies back, it is going to go back to this message out here. So meaning it is still, oh, A has initiated the connection with B, and this is a reply for that. So I will allow it. Okay, so meaning the reason it's called stateful is it is recording the state of communication. So it is telling A initiated communication. So the reply from B is allowed without a rule. Okay. Now let's say B initiates the connection from B to A. The firewall will check in the database. It will see there is it is not a reply. It is a new communication that is happening out there. And this will drop or block that particular communication out there. That is the reason when you communicate from one place to another, it is allowed and you are getting a reply back because it is a stateful firewall. So previously, now stateful firewall is allowed in all firewalls. That is the default behavior. But if there may be certain situations in your real-time working where you might be working in an old firewall, right? At that time, you have to check before writing the rules how exactly this is going to be done out there, right? So that is one important thing that's going to be there. And this is one of the interview questions when you go for blue team testing. They'll ask what is the difference between a stateful firewall and stateless firewall, right? That is what they're going to ask out there. So there's one more thing. Now, my question is, right, you have given up, you have written a rule. Now, let's say you made a mistake, that rule out there. How we are going to delete that rule? Right? How we are going to delete that rule? Sudo ufw status. You can give this out there. Give the numbered out there. See, it is telling for each rule there is a number that is assigned out here. So what you can do is that if you want to delete a rule, it's very simple. ufw delete and give the number of the rule. So let's say I want to delete TCP SSH for TCP IP v4. Just give number 2 here and press enter. Then yes, right? Can give the status again. You will see I can no longer connect via SSH, right? Previously I had given a rule that allowed me. This is an older communication, so this will allow, this session is still active. But if I redo it again, this will not allow me out there. So this is a big mistake. So this may be required by you because you might give out a wrong IP or port number or things like that. That is going to be out there. So let me see, delete the 3 also. That is for both SSH, TCP IP, IPv4 and IPv6. This is how it's going to be done out there. But let's look at one final rule which is of importance. Okay. This is my web server. Okay. Port number 18. Allow everyone, right? But port number 22 SSH, I want only admin system to connect. So meaning, let's assume the IP address for admin system is 192.168.178.133. Only this system should be allowed on 22. Any other system I try to connect, it should be blocked. So that I can do that in firewall. So the source and destination can also be taken into consideration. Okay. So let's write a rule for that. So writing a rule here is very simple. So meaning what I'm telling is the IP address here is 130.130. In this case, let's see what is the IP address. I have IPA 128. Okay. And the new Kali machine which we created just now, what is the IP address is 133. So let's do one thing. We'll create this particular IP address to be a given access for SSH. Other 2 machines should not be given access for that. So it is simple. Sudo pfw allowed from 192.168.178.133. One second. I think we made a mistake on the rule. Port 22 remaining. One second, I think this just a second. Let me, I think I'm ready.
Sir, can I ask a question, please?
Yeah, please go ahead.
What action should be taken when the rule is meshed?
Yeah, that is why. So here that is I'm specifying here is that UFW allow. This is going to allow for that particular thing out there. If it is like a drop, so it might prevent from accessing that particular thing. So let's say, but here when you're going in that particular way, the priority of the rules has to match as well. For instance, if I tell UFW drop TCP 80/TCP, right, from 192.168.178.133, right? So this I'm not comfortable. I think I'll come back to that later. So this is what is going to happen is that runs. As it.
So what's the difference between UFT and UFW?
No, there's no. The UFC is wrong. That's from I made mistake. From 1 second, a minute. Wait. No, sorry. Instance. Right. So now sudo UFW status if I give here. It is telling it is for any port. If I'm trying to access from this machine, it will block. Right. So for instance, if I try to access here, this is allowing for that. The main reason is this particular is finalizing it, because as soon as this is the rule number 1, it is checking allow anyone to access port number 80. So it is going to do that part. So that is the reason why it is there. We have to be very careful, you know. Yeah, but when I'm trying to access student, it is not allowing for that, right? So what I'm trying to tell is when you're connecting this particular route, what it is tell when connecting from machine 192.168.178.133 block for all port. Okay, it is telling block for all port, but here we are seeing only port number 22 is getting blocked. But when I'm trying to connect on port 80, that is accessing the page, it is allowing me for that. The reason is that I'm blocking this particular deny option where I'm giving it on the rule number 2, right? But what happens is that firewall will first check the rule number 1. According to the rule number 1, it is telling allow anyone to access 80, right? So before it comes to this second rule, it is allowing the packet to go on. So for this to properly happen, what I have to do is I have to, sudo UFW delete 1, right? Because that is the port number TCP. Then I can give status number. Right. So I will do the delete again for the second one. Okay. So now, according to this, I should not be allowed to access this, right? So here now it is not allowed to access out there. But what about the rest of none of them will be able to access it? That is not going to be the case. Now I'm going to give sudo afw allow 80/TC. Okay. So now this machine will be able to access it. Right here, I'm able to access it. But when I'm trying to access it from here, it will not allow me to access it. Why? Previously, it allowed sudo UFW status, right? So this is the first rule it is going to check. When you're writing your firewall rules, the priority in which you're going to write is very, very important. If you're allowing that packet in an earlier, then denying it in below, this is going to be an issue, right? This is why it is very, very important to understand the priority. Why numbering of the rules is very important. Okay. So let me delete the first one, sudo UFW. Delete one. Yes, so that I'll be able to access it. So just I'm just checking for one more way of doing it. Let me check my note. Yes, sudo UFW. Right, so we can see here. Let's see, is it allowing here? Yes. So now see here, what I gave a very specific rule out here, telling that a particular IP only should access port 22, right? Port 22 is running for SSH. In some cases, this is basically when you're trying to run in AWS instance and you want to allow only a particular IP address should have access to SSH, right? A lot of times, a lot of people make a mistake of allowing anyone. So this will allow for something called as a brute force attack. This should not be the case. That time it will be an issue. Okay, so this what makes sure that only 192.168.178.133 will be able to access SSH, and no one else in the world will be able to access SSH for that. That is how it is going to work. Okay. So that's how technically what a firewall will do and what you will be doing at a firewall level when you are running your own services and things like that, right? This will have a lot more other things. For instance, in certain situations, you may be running on port number 8000, right? This could be some services could be running on port 1000. So how do you access that? Then you have to give UFW allow port number 8000 TCP should be accessed by anyone out there, right? For instance, if you're running a Sonar Cube, if you want to access your Sonar Cube, you have to allow port number 9000 to be accessed so that you can access Sonar Cube on the remote server. So that is how it is going to work, right? Let's assume you're running a Sonar Cube on a server, right? Your Jenkins machine is running on a different machine, and you don't want others to access the Sonar Cube services on this server. Only the Jenkins machine should allow that. So then you can write something like this, right? So you are telling UFW allow protocol is TCP, from which IP address here Jenkins I can give 11.11.11.11, and to this IP address I have to give out and which port number. Here I could give 9000. The reason why we are giving IP, you might be thinking, see, this is an IP address. It is why I have to give the source machine IP address. Why is that I have to give the source machine IP? Because I'm running on this machine only, right? I'm running on the actual machine only. Why I have to give my actual IP address for the actual IP address? The reason is the server may be running multiple IP addresses. It may be having multiple interfaces. So it makes sure only when a packet comes from one interface, I will be allowed to access that. Okay. So in some cases, you will tell when the communication is coming from a VPN connection only to connect to my SSH, I will allow for that. If the VPN is not running on the server, it will not allow the packet to communicate from some other locations coming also. Okay.
So if the server has multiple IP addresses, are you going to direct you to a particular one? Or
yes.
Okay.
Yes, we have to. That's the reason we have to give this particular IP address.
Okay.
Yeah. So it is coming through that interface. So because here we're dealing with private IP addresses, there is a limitation. But in reality, you may be dealing with public IP addresses. So that routing could happen from anywhere. So in order to prevent that kind of a situation, we do this process.
Sir, in terminology, we call it as source and destination, right? Allow the
Yes.
destination IP in a source security wall or something.
Correct.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Yeah. So see, this is the packet originating from. So which direction it is going to, right? If the communication is coming from Kali Linux to the Ubuntu machine, then this becomes source and this becomes destination. When the reply goes for this, okay, this becomes destination, this becomes source. That's how it goes. So that is why this is network firewall configuration. It's a bit more logically thinking is a bit intensive here. So we have to think, okay, how the packet is going, where it is happening. We have to visualize a lot of things out there. Most of the time when it comes to firewall engineers work, it is basically they'll spend a lot of time on troubleshooting only, right? Because a lot of variations could be there. So we are constantly modifying that things out there. Right? So this firewall occurs usually something called as an firewall is a blue team. This is not same as SOC. SOC people don't deal with firewall or anything. Simple way of telling is SOC people will be having a very large screen or anything. They'll be sitting. They'll be getting alerts. The system, let's say a server, your laptop, someone connects a USB drive. It will generate an alert and send it to the SOC. The SOC people have to check whether that alert is actually a legitimate alert or not a legitimate alert. And they will have a certain set of rules for them, right? Whom, if it is actually a problem, whom should they contact and what? So now they will tell to the firewall engineer, a firewall, please block this, write a new rule, block this device. It is trying to attack and things like that. So that is what a SOC is basically about. SOC is technically it's a technical work, but the way it operates is different, right? It is predominantly working on logs, understanding what logs is happening. It is yeah, that's bit. So I would, if you're really someone who is really passionate about security, then Security Operations Center SOC is may not be an ideal place to start. Right. You can start up with networking, network security, then move to firewall, then go from there. Right. Firewalls is also one way. And DevSecOps also comes in a lot of other things out there. Right. DevSecOps predominantly we have seen they work since it is an early stage, there's a lot of demand. you see a lot of the students who are communicating, even at the interview level, they're actually interacting with the top tier management. Chief technical officer, chief CEO, executive officers are the people who are trying to interact with them, because a lot of small and medium companies are wanting to implement this and they don't know how to implement. And after finishing the training, our students, we have seen they go there and implement the solutions out there. That is how it works. Okay. So any questions related to firewall anymore? I think that's it for today. Any questions related to firewall?
Yes.
Yes, Mr.
Yeah, I wanted to ask, with the ports you've enabled, they are HTTP. Can we also enable HTTPS?
Yes.
When you did this.
Yes, that's possible. So for that, let me share the screen. That is very simple. What I have to do is, see, is a sudo ufw allow. If you give HTTPS, this is same as if you give this link rule added sudo ufw status. You see 443 port number. This is what is going to be done. Technically, what happens is that they will not allow port 80. In some cases, they will only allow port 443. Right? They don't want the communication to happen. So in the course, what we do is that there's one concept where we'll run a web server and there's something called as a virtual hosting we do. Right? So there we create, first we create a HTTP website. Then we create an HTTPS. We'll set up the certificate and things and all. A self-signed certificate, a self-signed HTTPS. Then we enable the firewall accordingly for that, right? So if someone try to access, let's say over HTTP 192.168.178.129, this will not open. Okay, only when they try HTTPS, this will open. Right? Only when they do the HTTPS part, it will open on that. Okay. This can also be done, or we can also go allow port number 80 and allow whenever it die, we force to redirect to HTTPS website. That can also be done for security reasons. By that way, we can do it. Any other questions?
I wanted to also ask the other, not this free one, the other training that you give. Is it coming with a project for the students that are involved, or just training like this?
No, it comes with the capstone project, right, Menon? The other DevOps part.
Both the DevOps and the DevSecOps. Does it come?
Yeah, both. See, DevOps and DevSecOps both comes with an actual project at the end, right? Okay. For the DevOps, they're using GitLabs, and for DevSecOps, we use Jenkins. For that, where we see is that we're actually using a project for running a CI/CD pipeline where it will run different security scanners, right? We are using SonarQube out there. Then again, we're using CV scanners for Docker scanning. Then OWASP. One more tool is there. ZAP we are using for dynamic DAST fields, and then we are using Sync for SCA analysis, right? For checking out the components is safe or not, all those things. The different security scanners out there. We see how the reports are there generated and things like that. Yeah. And for DevOps also they have a bigger.
Yeah, the reason behind we have this kind of live project where you can do the practice. We learned that thing back in 2019, that after completing the course, student they have an idea about individual component of the particular domain, but when they are facing some interviewer and they ask like how you have implemented on your project, it is become a little bit harder for them to explain. Now to overcome that thing, we have a capstone project. Suppose I'm giving a scenario. For DevOps, we are going to starting with Linux, AWS, then 6 or 7 DevOps toolset, right? Now, capstone project, you need to work with all of them at the same time in a single project. So you not only have a better understanding about individual project, but you also have a understanding about their dependencies, how they interact and connect, integrate with each other. So that actually make the whole like totally different sense. So normally we count those capstone project time rather than training time, because it's take another 15 days to complete our students to complete their capstone project. So 6 weeks for cybersecurity or 7 weeks for DevOps classes. After the 7 weeks is done, our training is done, we'll provide you a capstone project, and then our trainer will connect with you every now and then. If you have any issues, you can communicate in our WhatsApp dedicated particular batch group, and Teams, Microsoft Teams. You will have a Microsoft Team access, a dedicated channel for you, so you can communicate with your fellow students, your trainer, to until unless you resolve the whole thing and reach the desired output. Make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. That's what I was talking about.
Yeah.
Thanks.
No issue. So I think we are at the very end of today's session. So we are going to wrap because we don't have any more session for DevOps. Sorry for the inconvenience because Mr. Debashish is down with fever, and he still in the morning also he has a plan that okay, I will somehow manage, but after like before 2 hours before he messages that hey, I don't think I can continue. So yeah, we have to postpone today's DevOps session for the next weekend. Meanwhile, our cybersecurity morning batch is going to start from next Friday, hopefully, and the DevOps morning batch is going to start from the next Friday, next to next Friday. So if you have any question about our paid training, free training, or even if you are in a job market or job hunting process, feel free to ask. We'll happy to guide. And yeah, that's it.
Yes, sir. What time?
Yeah, Larry.
Sir?
Yeah, Larry.
What time? Actually, we need it. That we need.
Larry, your voice is so, we can understand you are saying hello and what time, but after that we are losing your voice.
Hello, sir.
Yeah.
Okay, can you hear me clearly now?
Yes, far better.
Okay. All right, sir. So I said, what time will those free training start by Friday?
You're talking about the our job ready training, right?
No, I think she's
What is
talking
it?
about the free.
You are talking about the free classes or the paid classes?
The free classes.
Free classes only in Saturday. First 2 hours for
Okay.
cybersecurity and DevOps, and next 2 hours for DevOps.
Okay.
So first
Okay.
2 hours, Mr. Karthik will take care of the cybersecurity and DevSecOps part. Once that meeting is done, the same meeting link we normally use for our DevOps batch, and Mr. Devashish is the trainer.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Okay. Any more question?
Hello, sir. I have a question.
Yes.
What's the advantages of doing DevOps and then DevSecOps as opposed to doing DevOps and doing cybersecurity?
Now you can understand from the name from DevSecOps, right? DevOps is development and operation. DevSecOps is development security ops. So if you don't know how to, like I asked you secure a house, but you don't know what is inside the house, how the house is built, what is the how many compartment and how many rooms are there, you cannot secure. So in our DevOps classes, we start from very fundamental, and you need to remember that Linux is the core base. Without Linux, you are you cannot move an inch in operation field. So starting with Linux, then the very second best important thing is cloud. You have to have a expert level of experience in at least one. It's good to have two. So in our DevOps training, we start with Linux, then move forward to AWS, like solution architect level. You will become a pro. Then we go forward some component, major component of DevOps: Git, GitLab, Docker, containerization, Kubernetes, Terraform, Ansible. Now the holistic operation is done. Now in terms of business point of view, 60 to 70% company, they are right now adapting or adapted the DevOps on their software development lifecycle. Now you are moving forward to cyber security. Your goal will be how to secure their infrastructure, right? Now in our cybersecurity DevSecOps, we are going to start from the basic cybersecurity, like fundamental, which is like you have to have, like scanning, vulnerability management, those kind of thing. Then we'll move forward with our DevSecOps, like container security, cloud security, those part. Now, if you don't know about the containerization environment, you will not get the full benefit from our container security training, right? So DevSecOps is a unison of DevOps and cybersecurity. You get my point? Or did I answer you correctly?
Yeah. Now I was saying that if I did DevOps and I did cybersecurity, would I have the knowledge to go into the DevSecOps fields, or I have to do DevSecOps specifically?
You are not talking about our training. You are talking about in general.
No, I'm talking about your training. Like if I did DevOps with you guys and then I did cybersecurity with you guys, do I have to go and do DevSecOps, or it's
In
better to?
our cybersecurity classes have a DevSecOps modules. So we have a two training for this operation field. One for DevOps. In DevOps, this comes Linux, AWS, cloud, and DevOps toolset. The second course is cybersecurity and DevSecOps. So you don't need to do cybersecurity and DevSecOps separately. It is comes in under a single course.
Okay.
Because it is 6 to 7 weeks, Monday to Friday, 5 days. So we do have a huge, training session. And yesterday I asked one of our students that how is training is good, like what is your thought, what is your feedback, how you are cope up with the training. So he told, so he done our DevOps, he's doing right now cybersecurity. So he's telling that it is the more days passing, it's becoming more interesting and more harder. So now when you felt that something is hard, but you felt interesting, then you are in the right track. Now, just think about that. If you are trying to in the job market, trying to grab a job position for cybersecurity or DevSecOps with high payroll like 140, 150, 180K, you should have some skill set that is unique. And you are, your competitors, they having done their master's PhD on cybersecurity or having like 6-7 years, but still you are winning the bet. The reason behind, you have something, some hidden card on in your sleeve, and by which you can win the bet. That is the DevSecOps skill set. It is very unique, very rare, and very demanding in the right now in the market. Same goes for our data domain. We start with data analytics and move forward to data science with AI. Now here, the AI is the card of ace, and by which you can win the bet, because you'll find n number of DevOps position available in the market, and like if there is a X number of positions available, X square number of people are competing. But when it comes to DevSecOps, you'll find only a fraction of X is competing on that market.
To me, that makes very much sense, eh?
Now, those people have prior experience in non and like other background. That is a good to have, because we have seen so many students coming from hospital industry, educational industry, from grocery shop, from Uber driver, and they have gotten like a 6K figures job within 6-7 months. But normally they go for training with our placement plan. Like it comes with 6 more different services like profile management, interview assistance, including like a mock interview and preparation of that, marketing, certification, and other stuff. So that is a lots of thing our team members do. But 40 to 50% or 60% people, they got their job by themselves, not taking any help from our or any other consulting firm. Make sense?
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Yeah.
Okay. Okay then.
I
So I
want to
see
ask.
one
Hello?
lady. Again, your voice is
Hello?
little. Yeah.
Okay, I want to ask if there will be a certificate issued to us at the end of our training program.
I can distinctly understood some of the words, but not understood the whole sentence.
No, I think he's asking, will they get a certificate at the end of the cybersecurity training? Free training. Yes.
Yeah, you will get the like a certificate as for uh, not course completions, but for attending the certifications you will get. But for that you need to attend all of the session, like 70% of the live session, and at the same time you need to complete our training. Sorry, the course in our website. We are going to launch our new website, I think this Monday. So it will be much more easier for you to navigate, because our right now our website is little bit old, a little bit laggish. So we have developed a new website, and we are going to launch, I think, by Monday. Osas, is that
But how do you keep track of who's joining every
Come again?
Saturday?
Come again?
How do you keep track of who's joining every Saturday? And
Now,
how do you know that you registered for the free course?
Microsoft team give us an attendance report, how many people have joined and how many minutes they have stayed in that session. That's the reason this is Microsoft Teams paid version. That's the reason we normally don't allow like training on Google Free or Google Meets. Those are free, but still we preferred Microsoft Team because it's